G'day, today on Garage It Yourself, I'm going to be showing you a technique of how to get those perfect panel gaps. So let's see how I do that. Welcome back to Garage It Yourself everyone, the channel dedicated to the DIY car enthusiast doing things on a budget. Today I'm going to be showing you a technique of how you can get those perfect panel gaps. Perfect panel gaps aren't all about just having a uniform gap all the way around the panel. It's also about how the panel lines up with the body of the car. For this example, you can see that the curvature of the deck lid does not match the curvature of the body in a few places. So you have two choices. You either change the curvature of the body, which is going to be a lot of work. The simpler option is to change the curvature of the panel that's fitted to the body. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you a technique of how you can change the curvature of this deck lid so that it matches up with my body. You can use this technique on any bolt-on body panel of a similar construction to what this deck lid is. So as we get along into this, you'll be able to see whether it will actually work for your body panel. So with that in mind, let's see how we go about modifying the curvature of this panel so that it fits better on the car. First thing you're going to want to do is make a template of the curvature of the body. But before you do that, you're going to want to mark down some reference points for you to be able to transfer onto the template. So for me here, it's the body mounts where the hinges go. And once you've got your reference points, there's just a case of finding some cardboard, or I like using hardboard because you can cut that out and get a really solid template that you can then offer up to the panel. But like some thick cardboard could work. I just find it a bit flimsy. And then it's just a case of putting it in there and marking it up so that you end up with that. Got the hinge marks on there as well. So the next thing you're going to want to do is cut that out using a jigsaw so that then you have your template for being able to see how the deck lid is doing or the panel is doing in relation to lining up with the body. As you could see, when the template was offered up to the deck lid, there was quite a gap on either side between the shape of the vehicle and the shape of the deck lid. It didn't show very well, but from the earlier clip, there is a 1 mil discrepancy between the central curve of the deck lid and the body. So there's two things. One, the middle is going to need to be pushed in very slightly to recurve that area, but then both sides are going to have to be pulled outwards to recurve those. So what I'm going to have to do is make up some kind of former that I can put pressure on to then be able to do the bending. But the problem arises due to the construction of the deck lid. Most of the strength comes from the hinge panel, strength in the panel, and it is only spot welded along the top edge, and then there's a few in either end. There's nothing on the bottom edge. So what that means is if you put pressure on the outer skin, you're going to end up denting the outer skin. And I found that out the hard way when I tried this a while ago. So with that in mind, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to make up a former that somewhat matches the curvature of the outer panel, but then it steps down so that most of the pressure is actually going to be on the spot welded lip. And the other thing you have to keep in mind when you are trying to bend metal or materials is materials have a memory, and you have to bend them beyond the point where they're going to want to spring back to that memory point. So if I had a former that exactly matched the template, that wouldn't be enough for it to go past that memory reset point. So I'm going to have to make up the former so it has a lesser curvature along the top edge, so that it will bend past the memory point so that I can actually get a new curvature into it. So yeah, so that's the next thing, is making up a former, and then once I've made up the former, then I can actually start looking at rebending things. I do get the strong suspicion though, after messing with this a while ago, that I'm probably going to have to unpick all of the welds on both sides past the hinges to be able to get the sides to come out enough, because it might seem quite flimsy, but after trying this previously, there is a heck of a lot of strength in that top edge, and it really doesn't want to reform itself. So anyhow, I'll get on with making the former. So here we have the totally legit scientific method for being able to bend something. Got the former that I made, notched it out for going around the pressing there, and then just some wood stacked up that's sitting on the hinge plates, or where the hinge plates mount to on the strengthener panel, and then put the former there, and then I'm going to stand on it. A few judicial jerks of body weight, see what 80 kilos can do. Righto, go check that against the template. Righto, so the former method worked fairly well on the area between the hinges, but on the sides, even after unpicking all the spot welds, as I expected, it didn't work at all. It's just because there's so much strength in this vertical part of the pressing here. And so to be able to get it to bend, I've ended up using a technique that's just called pie cutting. It's just using the slitting disc on the grinder to make cuts every like inch or so. And all that does is that then releases the strength and the tension in that curved panel, allowing you to be able to bend it in either direction. With it being able to bend in either direction, it was then a case of having to clamp it into the template that I had made, and then welding up all of the cuts that I'd made. So one thing to keep in mind when you're welding on anything, but especially on thin body panels, is they're very susceptible to warping due to the heat that gets introduced to a small area, and that causes expansion, and then as the weld pool cools down, it actually shrinks to less than what it was beforehand, and the rest of the panel is quite cool, so you end up warping the steel because it wants to expand in one direction, but it can't because there's a large cool area. So to help minimize any warpage or shrinkage, because you don't want it to shrink, because then your curve will go one way or the other and you won't end up with what you want. So one way to minimize shrinkage is to use a method called backfilling when you weld. And in this case, you start off in the corner here and you work your way to the outer panel. And then you work from the outside edge of the lower lip into that corner. And like I says, what that does is it'll just help to normalize the heat occurring in that local area. So it'll help to minimize any shrinkage that might occur. Keeping it tightly clamped to the template as well until everything is completely cooled down will also help with any warpage or shrinkage that is going to occur. So with that in mind, it's now time to test fit this to the Beetle and we'll see how it went. Okie dokie, so got the deck lid bolted back on. It's been on and off a few times just to be checking the fit, and I did have to re-pie cut and re-weld in a few places a couple of times. But as you can see in the overlaid video here, that the fit to the body is now pretty spot on. I'm really happy with that. I think when it comes to doing the bodywork, all it'll need is just a light skim of fiber reinforced filler along the top edge and just like block sand that in. But as it is, like my hand slides up and down over it really easily without my fingers catching anywhere to see that there's a lip. Hopefully you'll have found one of those techniques useful in what you're doing on your vehicle. If you did, then please like my video. If you think it's going to be handy to someone else, then please share it around. And of course, if you like what I get up to on my channel, then please subscribe. Okay, catch you on the flip side.